morning, sun. How are you? Skies above. Gee, it's great to be alive and in love. Good morning, sun. Good morning, sun. Good morning, life. Good morning, sun. How are you? Skies above. Gee, it's great to be alive and in love. Good.
Oops. Wrong one. Okay. If I don't do this regularly, I get rusty. Even after 84 other attempts. Actually, more than 84, probably over 100 plus at this point. So, greetings. Is this thing working? Grab a cup. Okay. So, I had just a really strange encounter with a software company, and I thought I would just, it was so bizarre that I thought I would just share. And it's probably not the greatest example, but I think it's a good point to discuss and just get some feedback about customer support and product support and technical support. And maybe like my standards are just off, but this was truly bizarre. So let me just make sure. Oh, come on. Okay, one moment. PowerPoint, I don't know why it does this sometimes. It jumps me to the very last slide. Okay, so here we go. Let's try this again. So I had an integration, and it was between an ERP system and an external SaaS web-based system. And the idea is that we need to export vendors from the ERP system and send them over to the SaaS system so that they can be imported, so that the customer can process payments, receive invoices, whatever they're going to do in that SaaS system. No problem, right? And it was a low-tech integration. It uses a CSV file, and it exports CSV, uploads to a secure FTP site, and it gets imported in that SaaS system, like super low tech. It has been working for years. I think it's 5 years or so, and been working just fine, flawlessly. So the customer says, our vendors are not showing up in this SaaS system anymore. What's going on? I'm like, okay. And they're like, we don't know what the problem is. Okay, so let's take a look. They are not receiving any errors. They have no notifications, so they contact me to figure out why data is not showing up in the SaaS vendor system. So that's an interesting observation, which I hadn't really thought of before. Like, why didn't they just call the SaaS vendor? They're calling me because I'm the person who helped create this integration between the two systems. So for some reason, I am their first point of contact when anything goes wrong between these two systems. So that was kind of interesting. So let's think about what's going on here. The customer contacts me, and I try not to work for free, right? So I'm going to have to bill them for my time. And it's the accounting department who notices this problem. So it's accounting who contacts me. I have a call with accounting, but accounting doesn't have access to the integration, the servers, the logs, anything. So I then need to remember who their IT contact is. They don't even know who their IT contact is. So I have to find that name, schedule a call with IT, and then we schedule a call the next day to take a look at the logs. We look at the logs, everything's working fine. And I even invite accounting to participate. We see, okay, data exported, data uploaded, 0 errors. And it's occurred repeatedly over the last week. Everything is working flawlessly. And from experience, I log everything. I log that the file was exported. I log the file name. I archive a copy of the CSV file because, as I mentioned in the past, I have had third-party vendors say, you uploaded a bad file, or we didn't get the file, or your file didn't contain records, and like whatever excuse they came up with. And so I learned to always archive a copy of the file that I sent. Don't just send it and delete it. So I have a copy of every single CSV file that was exported and uploaded. I have a file of the timestamps. Everything is logged in excruciating detail because I've done this rodeo a few times. So I have all of the data showing everything is working flawlessly, right? No issues found. So I said, well, presumably the issue is on the SaaS vendor's end. We're uploading the file to them, but it's not making it in their system for some reason. So you're going to have to contact them, create a support ticket, and ask them what the problem was. So now the customer, we're on like day 3 or 4, customer, and this is after them taking a few days to notice the problem. So it's a full week at this point. The customer contacts the SaaS support, and they then have to wait a day for the SaaS support to respond. And it seems like it's offshore support, so it's not occurring in North America at least. Then support responds saying, oh, well, this is the problem. And their reply is like very strange. And so the technical details don't make any sense that I'll get into. So then rather than having the customer deal with this, I've been through this enough times that I draft a technical response for the customer. Say, look, rather than us going back and forth, please send this boilerplate text to tech support so that they can answer my technical questions, because playing telephone game through the customer is just not going to work. So I draft a reply, send it to my customer, they send it off to support, then we have to wait another day for support to respond. So here's the story of what that looked like. So the initial response from the SaaS technical support is the supplier import integrations, broken English here, you can tell, integrations failing with below, error in prod, and they copied and pasted this. There's an error, row 2, first column, primary contact phone work, and the message is, primary contact phone work US Canada number must have 10 digits. Non-US Canada must be prefaced with a plus sign. Okay, wait, we've been using this integration for over 5 years, and it broke in January 2022 with no notice, no notification. And highlighted in green is what we've been sending them. And this is coming from an ERP system that stores phone numbers just as a continuous string. So 10 digits for the kind of North American phone number format, plus 4 digits for an extension. So these are all digits, all contiguous, no spaces. Like there's a number. And this is what we've been sending them since day 1 of this integration. It's worked perfectly. So something changed on their end, obviously. We haven't changed anything. So the support person says, well, you need to look at our specification. It's clearly stated right here, and they send us a link. And the specification says it was last updated in February 2019. So here we are almost 3 years later, and it suddenly breaks for us. Their specification says you must send us an integer for phone numbers, right? But then it says US number should be in the format XXXYYYZZZZ. And it looks like there are spaces between each of those segments. And so I'm like, wait, what? Must be 10 digits in length. So it must be in this format and 10 digits in length. And I'm thinking, what does this mean? I don't understand. Like, I can take a guess as to what I think they want, but I don't really know this specification. This technical specification doesn't, like, as a developer, like I stayed at a Holiday Inn last night, so I am a developer, and Like, it doesn't make sense to me. And then non-US numbers can have a different format, same field. They can have a plus sign and the country code followed by a space. So that's explicit space there. And then the phone number, such as plus AA, XYZ, apparently with spaces. Now, I had to look up what this company was. Like, who are these people? So for context, this is a SaaS software provider, and they provide the SaaS software plus business transaction processing services. So this is a very popular, rapidly growing company. They're public, apparently. And as far as I could tell, the reported revenues are $186 million annual revenues at this point. They are basically doubling in headcount every year at least. And the latest I could find was they have over 2,000 employees working for them. So they are growing faster than they can possibly handle, which might be a clue as the problem. So if anyone's a developer, take a look at that specification and kind of like think about what went into this. So someone develops software that accepts a phone number that must be in this specific format, and then the specification calls this an integer. Now, I'm not the world's greatest developer, but I just see red flags all over the place here. Like, who does this? Who says, yeah, it's a good idea to, one, have a North American phone number format as default with spaces, no symbols, and then call this an integer. Someone wrote this technical specification, right, and documented this API spec. Wow, but that same field can then have a different format for international phone numbers with a plus, country code, and then a space, and then a North American phone number format. I'm just at a loss. This is a public software company. Okay, so I replied, said, can you answer a few of these questions? Are the phone number field values integers or strings? Just want to get that clarified right away because your spec says integer, your note indicates as a string. The phone number field should be integer as mentioned in document. This is the technical support that is responding to customers and responding to my developer inquiries. Should the phone number be formatted with spaces, or should the phone number be contiguous digits with no spaces? I'm just anticipating the bizarre response I'm going to get. Like, help me out here. It's not an integer, folks. Phone number should give with space as mentioned in document. And that's the same document that calls this value with spaces and a plus sign in integer, right? If the field is an integer, how is a plus sign allowed for international phone numbers? Since it is a phone number field, in document it just mentioned as integer, you could add plus sign, it would allow. What value should be supplied if there is no phone number for the supplier? Empty string, 10 zeros, with or without spaces, like, what do I do here? You could leave it as blank, empty string. Examples, and this person provides examples of the integer phone number format. And I'm just like, wow. And I didn't want to bother my customer. I didn't want to criticize this company because they're dependent upon them. And I don't want to say, boy, you really picked a winner here. But what is the lesson here? And I mean, I know this is not uncommon. I know that other companies have support challenges, shall we say. So, I mean, if I consider this like a standard, a data point, a benchmark, some reference at least for the standard of care that is being provided in the software industry among rapidly growing companies, I'm assuming that these breakdowns are in many respects due to their growth because it's not the highest quality, I would say. So it's like, wow. So I'm thinking, the standard is pretty low. The bar is pretty low. So what are the opportunities here? Like, how do it's kind of hard to use this as a reference, as a basis for how I can improve my customer support and customer service and application technical support. But just a few things come to mind. App Insights telemetry. Like, why did my customer not get a proactive notification that their import to this system was failing? Like, it should have been automated, right? There is a job that imports CSV files and it was failing. Clearly, the tech support was able to look it up. So why did we have to even submit a support case after a week to figure out what's going on? Why did they have to call me to research their local logs in order to figure out that everything was fine on their end and was failing on the SaaS provider's end? No notification, right? Just obvious opportunity. And if you're on Twitter, make sure to follow Christoph. We call him KB, and he's at MyNavBlog on Twitter, and he is very active with Business Central App Insights telemetry, doing a great job. And I'm implementing some of the application insights telemetry that he's working on, and we're putting it in our products, we're putting it in our PTEs, and we're making sure to enable App Insights telemetry on all of our Business Central tenants and all of our customer tenants, because we want proactive notifications of problems. Like, that's the whole point. I came from an on-prem world where we had no telemetry. We had no insight as to what was going on. We had no visibility as to the problems. We had to wait for a customer to contact us. We had customers who stopped using a product because they were unhappy. We never knew, right? And so App Insights telemetry, like, if you are not using App Insights telemetry and you're in the Business Central space, I'm going to have to get after you on that one. Like, that is borderline malpractice, right? If you're a Business Central partner, if you're a Business Central developer, if you're developing PTEs or AppSource apps, use App Insights telemetry. 1, it's not hard. 2, it is not expensive. I think it's essentially free for the basics. And the amount of information it provides you is invaluable. Now, I will say you do need to put in some extra work and effort and invest in order to get value out of that pile of App Insights telemetry data that's being collected. But once you see what it can do, like, it'll melt your brain. It melts my brain. So it's pretty phenomenal. So 1, App Insights telemetry, Business Central blows away every other platform tool application that I personally used. And, I haven't used a million products, but I can see that my application had an error. I can see that my application did X, Y, or Z, and we can have proactive notification of that. I can contact I can email my customer if they encounter an error with my application before they even submit a support ticket. Hey, we noticed this error occurred. Let's look into it. I mean, how good is that? It's not that customer has to contact their partner who has to contact the ISV. No, let's just shortcut all of that. Proactive error monitoring and notifications. Okay, let's just move on to the obvious. Don't write horrible applications. Who wants someone to send a phone number formatted with phone number segments separated by spaces? What developer thought that was a good idea? I'm just trying to understand. And maybe they're dealing with some bizarre implementation of their application that someone had a bad design from day one and their phone number is segmented. I can't even imagine. I wrote a blog post. Let me just pull it up. Steve Endo ERP phone number. So if you just Google Steve Endo ERP phone numbers, you will get this blog post. And it is the most embarrassingly geeky, nerdy, I don't know who reads this, but it was just something I did when it popped into my brain. And I went into the ITU E164 public telecommunication numbering plan to understand like what is the standard of phone number formatting and how should those be stored. So I'm kind of guessing I'm the nerdiest person when it comes to phone numbers. And the last thing I would do is ask a developer to send data to an API or an integration with spaces delimiting segments of phone numbers. Like it can only lead to trouble, right? And so I went in and looked at Dynamics GP, Business Central. I looked at Microsoft CRM. I looked at NetSuite, Zoho CRM, and like how do these systems store their numbers? And how do they deal with things like different country formatting, spaces, dashes, parentheses, extensions, a note, ask for Sally. And like, honestly, Microsoft CRM and NetSuite and I think Zoho, they just don't attempt to format. Like it's a losing proposition if you're going to try to impose a phone number format upon international phone number data. You will just lose that struggle. I can tell you right up front. So this is the way to go, in my opinion. So I, as a developer, wouldn't even bother. So anyway, getting back to the point, don't write bad applications. Like actually understand the data you're dealing with so that you're not trying to impose a format or content or whatever to this messy field. And I don't understand why they would need to have highly parsed, highly segmented phone number information. Like, what's the context for needing that? They're not a VoIP dialer, right? And so, one moment. Just gotta clean up some chat here. Okay, and so don't write bad specifications. So whoever wrote that specification and called this clearly a string phone number field with spaces and a plus sign, whoever called that an integer, like what were they thinking? And then support doubles down on that. They don't say, oh yeah, that doesn't make much sense, it's really a string. They don't provide feedback to the API documentation team. Like, what's going on there? Recognize your mistakes and improve. Like, all opportunities, right? So that's about all I can get from this. So unfortunately, it's so blatantly obvious. You're like, I'm not quite sure how I can improve above this very low bar. It's just not valuable because it's such a bad experience. Like, yikes. If I'm anywhere near this organization in terms of my support, I'm doing something very, very wrong. So any of these things would put you head and shoulders above this company. So, like, what? Yeah. Actually, this is a different story. So, yeah, anyway, that's the story from this SaaS software vendor. Just do better. It's not hard. So there was a second thing that I had a conversation that was really kind of surprising that was along the same lines, and it was a consulting failure. So the customer uses an ERP system. Their partner consultant got me involved in a phone call looking for a third-party product. They said, hey, can your product help solve this customer's issues? I think they would need it. So I get on the call and I'm really confused as to what we're talking about. So the customer contacted a partner about what turned out to be a significant issue. The consultant who apparently handled this inquiry was completely unfamiliar with the ERP system the customer was using. I don't know what this this consultant normally does, but for whatever reason, they were doing support calls or inquiries from customers using an ERP system that was not in their domain. And I understand if organizations need to multitask, but like the person had no concept of what the customer was asking. So that consultant, not having any context, immediately reached out to ISV Solution to say, hey, can you help with this problem? Without any understanding of what the problem was. And for context, the problem was that the customer's trying to post a transaction. It is failing, and it's just hard failing. And then when they try to fix that problem, even the fix is failing. So it's just like not even working. And it's very unusual for this particular problem to occur. After talking with them for over 20 minutes as an ISV, not their partner, not tech support, like I don't even know who this customer is, I tease out of them while the consultant's on mute this whole time, no interaction in this conversation because they have nothing to add. The customer is apparently importing a transaction. We're not quite sure because even the customer didn't understand what they were talking about. It's either a batch of 350,000 transactions in one batch, or even worse, it's potentially a transaction with 350,000 lines. And they're trying to post this, one or more of these, and it's failing. I'm like, well, I'm not surprised. In theory, it should work. In practice, these things don't always work. And this was a custom integration developed by the partner who's on the phone who is not helping their customer. And I'm thinking, wow, I don't even know the name of this company. And I'm having a 30-minute conversation to help them understand that their problem is caused and not being handled by the partner who's on the phone with them, who's taken 2 weeks to schedule a phone call with me. And I'm like, come on, we can do better. This should not be the standard of ISV solutions, should not be the standard of SaaS vendors, should not be the standard of partners. And, unfortunately, it should not be the standard that customers have for any of their vendors, right? But this customer clearly did not know any better. They were very lost. They didn't even know what they were talking about. They didn't even know their own ERP system well enough to describe to me their process and what was happening. I have these occasionally where 6 people are on the call, but none of them know what the process is or how things work or what data they're importing, what they're posting. They just know it's not working. And I somehow get involved with these. So I'm wondering, how did these things happen? In the case of the partner, I can only assume there are significant partner management failures going on, right? So something is happening where they're structuring their organization where there's a support triage failure that is resulting in this case being assigned to a consultant who doesn't even work with this ERP application, has no knowledge of it, and they're being asked to field this support case. Now, that's possible. I can get a request that I have no idea how to answer. What do I say? I don't know. Let me try to figure out what the solution is or ask for help, right? The consultant didn't ask anyone for help, or if they did, they were directed to look for ISV solutions because whoever answered their question or their plea for help didn't listen to all the details. And of course, this consultant couldn't have asked for the details because they don't even know what questions to ask. So the consultant didn't ask for help. And so it's like, wow, the number of breakdowns that must have occurred within this partner organization for them to get me on the call with their customer without first providing their customer with help just shows a cascade of failures going on internally. And not to criticize them, I get it. It can be challenging growing an organization. They're busy, they're overworked, whatever the excuse is. They're no longer supporting this ERP application, so it's kind of a low value product for them. They're putting their effort elsewhere. So I don't know, maybe these customers are being orphaned effectively, but because the partner is not admitting that fact, right? And sadly, the customer doesn't know any better. The customer doesn't know that they're getting poor support. The customer doesn't realize that the person who is answering their support tickets has no knowledge, is unable to help them, and they're not demanding more because the customer themselves have very little internal knowledge. They're unable to answer even my most basic questions about the problem they're experiencing. So literally, I had to ask them 10 questions to just get some idea of what's going on and what the real problem is. So let's just do some exercise here. What constitutes good support? I would say someone needs to care. The consultant who's answering the support ticket the tech support person who's answering the SaaS vendor support, they need to actually care. And honestly, I'm just not seeing it. It's really weird. I don't know what it is. Maybe they're clocked in, clocked out. Maybe they're just checked out. Maybe they're sick of working from home these days. Like, I don't know. Like, express some minimal desire to help customers. And then, like, be willing to, I don't know. That's totally fine. Like, I regularly encounter people who are unable or afraid to say, I don't know. I say I don't know all the time because, hey, it's much easier than pretending I know what's causing this error or problem. It's like, get over it. It's okay to say, I don't know. And then when you say, I don't know, you ask for help. I ask for help all the time. Ask forums, ask a colleague, ask another organization, reach out to someone. It's like, hey, can you guys point me in the right direction here? Like, yeah. Klaus says, caring? That seems radical. Yeah, it really does. Like, even though this customer, it's not even my customer. I literally don't know the company name. Like, I'm at the point where it's very clear I'm not going to be selling my software to them, but like like I feel pain when I see what they're going through and their partner has no concern for them. It's like, oh, come on. And I'm like, look, you guys have serious issues. Here's what you need to do, without trying to throw the partner under the bus, which should have been blatantly obvious, but I don't even think the customer caught it. And I'm having to compose an email with 10 questions that this consultant needs to ask their internal team. I'm composing those questions for this person. I'm doing this person's job as technical support for someone who's not even my customer. It's like, look, otherwise, like, yeah. Anyway, ask for help. And hey, like, while we're at it, help others, even though, like, what's the word? You get no direct benefit, right? So support forums, the random emails I get, these like crazy videos, this partner contacting me thinking they're going to have the customer purchase my product. And I'm like, no, you got bigger issues. Like, you're not even close to purchasing my product. It would be a disaster because you don't even understand the problem you're trying to solve internally, right? So get your house in order and then we'll talk if it makes sense. Yeah, I don't know. So these are so fundamental. I don't even know that this is advice. This is like obvious common sense, or it should be. Like, I'd love to get to the level where I discuss, okay, how can we better manage support tickets and use App Insights for active identification of cases and proactive notification? I'd love to talk about that workflow, but no, I'm instead talking about actually caring about your customers. So maybe I'll get to the advanced class in the future, but yeah, so it was just a wild coincidence of calls that I had, and I'm like, wow. Yeah. So don't be like this SaaS provider, right? Like, recognize if your documentation looks like this, you probably have a software design issue, like a fundamental software design issue, that this is even a thing. Like, I chatted with my developer about this and he just says, that's crazy. That's like the only thing he could say is, that's just crazy. Like, we're both trying to comprehend what had to go on at an architectural level that this was even remotely a possibility for a phone number format. We don't know. Like, I'm sure there's like some bizarre intertwined series of dependencies and weird technical constraints and bad design choices that just all collectively came together in this amazing piece of beauty that resulted in spaces being part of a phone number format. But yeah. So anyway, that's been my week. Like I just see the strangest things, and like, let me know. Are these anomalies? Hopefully this is not normal, because I find it so strange that I'm just kind of speechless. Like, wow. And the sad part is I talk to other people and colleagues, and they're like, that seems to correlate with the experience I'm getting with software vendors, ISVs, SaaS providers, and consulting firms. Now, to be fair, there are good people at these organizations. I've received feedback that the consulting organization that really dropped the ball, there are some really sharp people there. But I assume they are just slammed because they're like the shining ray of hope in that organization who knows what they're doing. So everyone's probably glomming onto them and asking them for help, which, I've seen as well. And then when on the SaaS software side, when a company grows, when they're doubling in size, obviously it can be challenging to maintain a minimum level of quality and competence. And then they're outsourcing, which if you're offshoring stuff, it's really hard to, especially on a contract basis, really hard to maintain quality. But, needs to be managed. So Klaus says, sadly, this is not unusual. So anyway, the point of all this, I'll try to wrap it up. Good support is a competitive advantage. You think, oh, my product needs to be better. I need to have these whiz-bang features. And although it may not shine on a product brochure or on a consulting organization sales pitch, like we have good support, it sounds like just like anyone can say that. But when your customers experience good support and they're just surrounded by vendors providing bad support, they may not say the words, they may not even consciously recognize, say, wow, this is all so bad, this is good. But in my experience, working just in my personal life with bad customer support, good customer support, I will pay money to work with the companies that provide good support. So my insurance company, for instance, my personal insurance company, they are so good that I would pay them an annual membership just to use their insurance services. They are that good. And the other ones, they would have to pay me just to even talk to them. And it's like, wow, like I notice it. It is just shocking how different it is. And, we have some local companies like, strangely, In-N-Out Burger. You drive through, go to their drive-through, go to their restaurants, and the service, the quality, the employee attitude, the way they just function. You just watch them walking around in a kitchen doing their work, and they have the big windows on the outside so you can see the employees working. It's like, wait a minute. This is a different company than many other companies. You can just tell they're managed differently. It's a different quality, different level. And I'm glad to buy their product and buy their food. And there are a few others like that. So I think that can become a competitive advantage. You're not going to have it on the marquee, but for your customers that use your services, it can really be a competitive advantage, I think. And it's not that hard. This is the bar that you're competing against, really. So if you just implement some caring about the customer, radical concept, app insights, telemetry, proactive notification, Business Central feature that's incredible, right? Internal policy of, if you don't know how to solve this technical support question, ask for help. And if you don't get the answer you want, escalate internally. Don't make the customer get upset and force you to escalate, right? Just really basic concepts. You don't need to have a 99.99 SLA. You don't need to have an SLA that says 30-minute response time on support tickets, because that, I've learned, is the wrong metric. Just care. So anyway, so internally in our organization, we had to talk about this. I showed them this series of just bizarre support interactions, and they're just like, yeah, this is horrible. And we all agreed we can do better. So that's what we're working on, do better. So with that, provide good support, please. Like, help out your customers, and Have a good day. Okay. Talk to you later.
Do, do, do,